showery rain, blustery winds, temperatures hovering around 10 degrees in London, while Scotland sees minus conditions on higher ground. That's the picture across the United Kingdom this afternoon. I've been examining the latest data from the Met Office, and what we are dealing with is a classic unsettled Atlantic pattern. Bands of low pressure have been tracking across the country throughout the day, bringing these showery outbreaks. Let us break down what is happening, what is coming, and what you need to know. Right now, conditions across the country are quite variable. If you are in London and the southeast, you are looking at temperatures around 10 to 11 degrees Celsius. That is actually rather mild for late January, running slightly above the seasonal average. You had a reasonably bright start this morning, but the rain has been moving in since late morning and it is continuing through the afternoon. Move north to Manchester, Birmingham, Leeds, and it is noticeably cooler. Temperatures sitting around 6 degrees. Liverpool's a touch warmer at 7 to 8 degrees. The mild Atlantic air hasn't quite reached as far north with the same intensity. Now, Scotland is experiencing rather different conditions altogether. Temperatures ranging from 6 to 8 degrees in the lower areas, but on higher ground, we're not just seeing rain. There's snow settling above about 400 metres. The southeast of Scotland has been dealing with particularly persistent and heavy rainfall throughout the day. That looks set to continue into this evening. The wind is a notable feature today. Strong, blustery conditions affecting most regions. Average wind speeds around 19 kilometers per hour, but coastal areas are experiencing gales in places. When you factor in the wind chill, it feels considerably colder than the actual temperature suggests. If you've been out today, you'll have noticed that humidity levels are sitting between 83 and 85%. Combined with the rainfall, it is contributing to that damp, uncomfortable feel. Not particularly pleasant conditions. Let me explain what's driving this weather pattern. We've got a series of Atlantic low-pressure systems tracking across the British Isles. These lows are bringing moisture-laden air from the Atlantic, which is why we're re-seeing these persistent showery outbreaks. The jet stream is positioned to our north, steering these systems directly across the UK. According to the Met Office data, the pressure has been falling throughout the day. We're re-looking at readings around 995 to 1,000 millibars across much of England and Wales. Scotland is seeing slightly lower pressure, which explains the more intense precipitation there. The ECMWF model and the UKMO model are in fairly good agreement on the short-term outlook. Both suggest this unsettled pattern continues through tonight and into tomorrow. There is no immediate sign of high pressure building in to settle things down. Looking at the rainfall totals, southeast Scotland has already seen between 20 and 30 millimetres today. Some localised areas might have exceeded that. For context, that's a significant amount in a single day, though certainly not unprecedented for this region in winter. In terms of visibility and sunshine, with the thick cloud cover and rain, we're re-seeing very limited bright spells. In January, London typically sees only about 2 hours of sunshine per day on average. That is just 19% of daylight hours. With conditions like today, we're well below even that modest average. Now, many of you will remember similar patterns from past winters. This isn't exceptional. Britain in January means dealing with Atlantic systems, rainfall, and generally unsettled conditions. The difference between this and, say, the winter of 62 to 63, or even the beast from the east in 2018, is quite stark. Those were properly cold events with sustained Arctic air. What we are seeing now is mild Atlantic air, which brings rain rather than snow, except on the highest ground. Tonight, the pattern continues. Showery rain will persist across many areas. The heaviest and most persistent rain remains across southeast Scotland. If you're in that region, it's going to be a wet night. Temperatures will hold up reasonably well, though London staying around 8 degrees overnight. Further north, Manchester and Birmingham dropping to about 4 to 5 degrees. Scotland seeing temperatures between 2 and 5 degrees in lower areas with freezing levels around 500 metres. The winds remain blustery overnight. Gusts could reach 40 to 45 miles per hour in exposed coastal areas. Inland areas seeing sustained winds of around 20 to 25 miles per hour. That's enough to make it feel rather raw, particularly if you are out in it. Cloud cover remains extensive tonight. We're not expecting any significant breaks in the cloud. That means no frost risk for most areas, as the cloud acts like a blanket, preventing temperatures from dropping too far. However, any sheltered valleys in Scotland could see temperatures dip to freezing or just below. Looking ahead to tomorrow, Thursday, the unsettled pattern continues. More showery outbreaks pushing through. The difference is that these showers become a bit more scattered in nature rather than the persistent rain bands we've had today. You might see some brighter spells between the showers, particularly particularly across England and Wales. Temperatures tomorrow remain near today's values. London and the southeast around 9 to 11 degrees, the Midlands and northern England 6 to 8 degrees, Scotland 5 to 8 degrees, still running slightly above average for the time of year. The wind remains a factor tomorrow. Blustery conditions continue, though perhaps not quite as strong as today. Average speeds around 15 to 20 kilometers per hour, with gusts to 35 miles per hour in exposed spots. By Friday, we start to see a slight change. The low-pressure systems begin to shift their track slightly further north. This means southern and central England might see a bit more in the way of drier interludes. Scotland and Northern Ireland remain under the influence of these Atlantic systems, so showery conditions continue there. Looking at the weekend pattern, and this is where it gets interesting, the models are showing signs of the unsettled weather continuing, but there is some disagreement on the detail. The ECMWF model suggests a more active weekend with further bands of rain pushing through. The GFS model is slightly less aggressive, showing more scattered showers rather than organized rain bands. What we can say with confidence is that temperatures remain near or slightly above average. We're not looking at any significant cold snap in the immediate future. The Atlantic influence remains dominant. For next week, the pattern looks to remain unsettled. Further low-pressure systems tracking across or near the UK. This means more showery outbreaks, breezy conditions, and temperatures staying on the mild side for late January. Now let's talk about what this means practically. If you are planning outdoor activities this week, you need to be prepared for wet weather. Carry waterproofs. An umbrella is useful, though in today's wind, a proper waterproof jacket is more practical. Layer your clothing. Whilst the temperatures aren't particularly cold in absolute terms, the wind makes it feel colder. Several thinner layers are more effective than one thick layer. You can adjust by removing or adding layers as needed. For driving, be aware of surface water on roads, particularly in areas that have seen heavy rainfall. Scotland, that applies especially to you given the persistent rain you've had today. Allow extra time for journeys. Visibility is reduced in heavy showers, and spray from other vehicles makes conditions more challenging. If you are in Scotland dealing with the snow on higher ground, the usual precautions apply. Drive to the conditions. If you don't need to travel on higher routes, avoid them. The snow combined with the wind is creating drifting in exposed areas. For those with gardens, this wet weather might cause some localized waterlogging. If you have areas that tend to flood or become waterlogged, keep an eye on them. Clear gutters and drains to help water flow away properly. The elderly and vulnerable should take extra care in these conditions. The combination of rain, wind, and relatively mild temperatures can still be uncomfortable and potentially hazardous. Wet pavements are slippery. The wind can be destabilizing, particularly for older people. Farmers and those in agriculture, the ground is becoming saturated in many areas. This persistent rain is making fields very wet. That has implications for fieldwork and for livestock. In Scotland, with the heavier rainfall, this is particularly relevant. For those waiting for proper winter weather, East Anglia and parts of the southeast, this Atlantic pattern doesn't favour snow at lower levels. You need Arctic air or cold continental air from the east for that. At the moment, the Atlantic is firmly in charge. The mild air from the southwest is keeping temperatures too high for snow, except on the highest ground. Looking at the broader pattern, what we're re-seeing is fairly typical for late January. The jet stream is active, steering these Atlantic systems across the UK. Until we see a change in the jet stream configuration, this pattern is likely to persist. Some winters, we get a blocking high pressure to our north or east, which allows cold air to feed down from the Arctic or across from the continent. We saw that in 2018 with the beast from the east. A blocking high over Scandinavia allowed bitterly cold air to flow westwards. That is not the pattern we have now. Currently, the jet stream is running fairly zonally, west to east, with us sitting underneath it. That means we get these mobile weather systems tracking through regularly. It's unsettled, but it's not particularly extreme. The question many of you will have is whether this pattern changes anytime soon. Looking at the extended outlook, the next 10 to 14 days show a continuation of this mobile, unsettled pattern. There are hints, and I stress hints, that we might see something colder develop later in February, but that low confidence at this range. What the models are suggesting is a possibility of the jet stream amplifying into a more meridional pattern later in the month. That could allow colder air to push south, but at this range, 2 to 3 weeks out, the confidence is low. These patterns can develop or they can fail to materialize. For now, we work with what we have. Unsettled weather, showery outbreaks, temperatures near or slightly above average, and breezy conditions. That is the outlook through the next week to 10 days. The Met Office has not issued any severe weather warnings for the immediate future. The conditions we are seeing are unpleasant but not dangerous for most areas. Scotland's persistent rain deserves attention, and they re-monitoring the situation. but as of now, no warnings are in force. One thing worth mentioning is the impact this sort of weather has on people's health and well-being. The grey, damp conditions we've been experiencing can be quite wearing. Limited sunshine in January anyway, and with cloud cover like this, we're seeing even less. That affects mood and energy levels. It's worth being aware of that. The temperature swings we sometimes get in patterns like this, where it's mild one day and colder the next, can also affect people. Sinus problems, headaches, joint aches in those with arthritis. It's real and it's worth recognizing. If you're able to get outside even for a short time when there's a break in the showers, do so. Even a brief walk in daylight, even under cloud, helps. Vitamin D levels are low at this time of year anyway. Any daylight exposure helps. Keep an eye on the forecast updates. The pattern is fairly straightforward for the next few days, but beyond that, there is more uncertainty. If you have plans for the weekend or early next week, check the forecast closer to the time. For flooding concerns, the Environment Agency monitors river levels and issues flood warnings when necessary. If you are in an area prone to flooding, keep an eye on their updates. Wales Natural Resources. Wales provides the same service. Scotland, SEPI, the Scottish Environment Protection Agency. So to summarise where we are, unsettled Atlantic pattern, showery rain, blustery winds, temperatures near or slightly above average. Tonight, continued showery rain with the heaviest across southeast Scotland. Tomorrow and through the weekend, the pattern continues with further showers. Next week, more of the same. Prepare for wet weather. Layer your clothing. Drive carefully. Look after elderly neighbours. Keep gutters and drains clear. And don't expect any settled weather in the immediate future. This is fairly typical January weather for the UK. Not particularly extreme, but persistent and rather wearing. You've seen this pattern before many times. It's what happens when the Atlantic is in charge. I will continue monitoring the models and the Met Office updates. If anything significant develops, if we see signs of that pattern change I mentioned, I'll provide an update. For now, that's where we stand. Wet, breezy, mild, the British winter doing what it does. Stay dry.